Hello.
Okay. Yeah, hold on. Let me get Kyle over on here. I'm about to be on the air. Hold on one second.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, Kyle. Okay, about 30 seconds. I'm going to merge you in here with Jimmy Hodge, okay?
Perfect.
All right. Okay. Hey, I've got Kyle on, and Billy Roberts is going to call in about 3:15 or 3:20 from Atlanta. How much time, Kyle, do you have?
I got about 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, as soon as all right, we'll keep you on. Then he'll call in about 3:15, 3:20. That'll be the deal. Thanks for coming on. I want to get into more of this name, image, and likeness, and what we talked about yesterday. That was cool stuff. Okay, ready?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, tell me when, Audrey. Okay, welcome to the Sunday afternoon. www.sidelines.live. Rob Browne broadcasting here from the Cherry Farm over here in Parkin, Arkansas. I've been duck hunting again this morning. It is a great time of year. A lot of people were here. Man, we had about 20 people over here, guys, watching a lot of football, hunting, eating ribs, brisket, pork. We have a new one, pork on pork, guys, stuffed with cream cheese and brats. Can we say Ditka there, Jimmy Hodge in Chicago at heart attack number 7, 8? I mean, it was unbelievable. But I've got Kyle Orr on the show with us today from over in Atlanta. Works with Melt Atlanta, sports marketing and branding company. And I'm going to let Kyle talk a little about Melt here in just a minute. And also Jimmy Hodge, National College Football contributor here on Sidelines. This is our weekly Sunday afternoon wrap-up show. We'll be on 3 to 5 p.m. Central, 4 to 6 Eastern time zone, east of the Chattahoochee and the Caney Fork. And, hey, Eastern time zone period. But we're always on, again, remember, Fridays, 3 to 5 p.m. Central on the Sidelines.live podcast. Saturday mornings, 8 to 10 a.m., Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis, 96.1 FM, and the new FM 98.5, Sports 56 WHBQ.com website. And always the Sidelines.live website. And again, Sunday afternoons, 3 to 5 p.m. Central, Sidelines.live. If you missed the shows or you want to go back and listen to them again, you can always go to our website, maintained by our man Nigel. It is www.sidelines.live. We archive all the shows. We even put recipes on there from the Rebel Chef Roger Watson. He's got some great turkey recipes, duck recipes, a lot of good stuff. Let's get straight to the point. Yesterday had a great show, and Kyle, you joined Jimmy, and Jake Crane will be on with us in the 4 to 5 hour. And when we got into talking about name, image, and likeness, and about the future of the bowl games, should we go from a 4 to an 18 playoff format? So there's a lot of debate that's going to be bantered around about that. We've got a national championship matchup that looks to be, guys, a really good game. Ohio State, Dabo, you're a heck of a coach. You've won 2 national championships the last 5 years. Why did you ever make anything out of ranking Ohio State number 11? That was crazy. And we're going to have to get Richmond Weaver on here, Kyle, from over in Greenville, who does a lot of work with, Richmond on Sports, talking about the reaction of the Clemson fan base about, that. But look, Ohio State's just a good football team. But Kyle, I know you've got a little bit of time here with us today. Let's pick back up, though. Name, image, and likeness, and how that could really be a positive going forward for the bowl games, because that term opting out, which for the most part means I quit, would be potentially erased because there is money on the line. And let's talk numbers. But real quick, tell people about Melt, because we got listeners all over the country, all over the world because of the web. Melt Atlanta Inc. You work there. You're a recent Georgia grad, and you're a really sharp kid. I think you've got an unbelievable future in sports marketing, and heck, you could be our agent one day.
Oh, Rob, I appreciate that. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. All that food sounds so good. You might have to ship it up a little bit of cooler up to the big city of Atlanta. But,
That's right. That's right.
Like I said, thanks for having me on. And yeah, so I work for Melt, MELT, and we are located in Buckhead, Atlanta, and we represent dozens of brands, produce thousands of events, handle millions, if not billions, of dollars of sport marketing money for these companies. The one that comes off the tip of your tongue will be Coca-Cola. And so working through Coke, we're around college athletics all the time. We do College Game Day. We do the Nick Saban Aflac ads. You name it, and we've been there. And so as a recent employee, I've learned so much. And during this NIL turbulent time and all this NIL legislation that's coming, it's been awesome. And so looking forward to NIL. And like you said, trying to, cancel that opt-out to an opt-in. I think, and we think that there's a major opportunity for bowl games to be able to pay players to be able to play. Where it gets sticky is does each player demand a certain value, which companies that he accepts sponsorships from, what if they are rivals with the bowl sponsor? And so there'll be definitely a bunch of issues around it, but NIL, name, image, likeness legislation is coming like a freight train in Q1. And we've got a lot of new big things from Melt coming that we're going to preview and release y'all's way in March.
Well, the narrative, again, it always tends to weigh toward the negative side. Well, the future of bowls, the future of college football is in trouble. And again, Sidelines is about finding positive solutions. We look for excuses to win. Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago, you've got a lot of experience. One of the 4 people that rebranded Adidas sports gear all over the country. You've got relationships with college football and basketball coaches that very few people in the country have. Weigh in and give your thoughts. I know you and Kyle and I had a great show after the show yesterday, but Jimmy, your insight is as good as anyone out there.
Well, when we talk about the future of the bowl games, I think this particular season has really opened a lot of eyes into just exactly how much power that the players have that I don't think anybody ever realized until the last couple of weeks, really, when it comes to just again the leverage they possess, because you had a number of situations where bowl games ended up not even being played at all because coaches allowed the players to come to a vote on it. And, a good portion of teams chose not to play just because of, I think, all the obstacles that really none of these teams had ever experienced before in a season, like not knowing until the day before game whether or not a game would be played, depending on the outcome of the virus tests that take place, I guess, either Tuesday and Friday of every week once the season began. And that really just kind of threw a monkey wrench into a lot of different things. And I'm sure it also had to affect the thinking of companies like Melt on how you make adjustments to situations like this and what you're going to try to do going forward. And Kyle mentioned a couple of the ideas they had. So it's it's a time where we're just throwing a lot of precedents out the window and so forth, and it's just it's a situation where we're certainly in uncharted waters in so many ways.
Yeah, and Kyle, I'm going to throw this one at you. Great point, Jimmy, about how you had Sunday. I know Auburn's schedule was Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday for the virus test, and you never knew. But I don't think there were but 18 teams that played 10 games this season, and also a handful of teams that didn't have to cancel a game themselves because they had too many positive cases of the China virus. But Kyle, I know you've got limited time. Again, Give us your feedback. Last year, March 16th, the world kind of stopped spinning there for a minute. We didn't have an NCAA basketball tournament. Melt also produces the NCAA Final Four. Give us your feedback. What do you think? I know we're just getting into basketball right now, transitioning football. A week from tomorrow, we'll have the national championship game. What's happening?
Well, it's a great question, Rob. So for at least what I can disclose out here to the press, the NCAA has released that they will attempt to hold the tournament in one geographical location. So that's kind of like an NBA bubble. They're obviously Indianapolis was the target city. And so they're monitoring what the Pacers are doing. They're monitoring what the Colts are doing. And likewise with the women's Final Four in San Antonio. Those locations have not been confirmed yet, but there's just a lot of discussion and discourse between the brands because so much, like, for example, how we do the Final Four and how we do the Final Four music show on the day in between the games. There's so many auxiliary events and foot traffic and advertisements and concessions. All of that is all a question mark as of now. And so realistically, listeners out there, you're going to be looking at a bubble. And the main question is going to be, what kind of foot traffic is going to be around? What kind of advertisement in the stadium? What kind of advertisement with the student athletes? And so we're really the NCAA financially cannot afford to not have this March Madness, especially since of last year's. But it's going to look a whole lot different.
Well, last year, the NCAA makes, Jimmy and Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, 85%, maybe 90% of their entire budget from the basketball tournament. And by not having it last year, I know I'm sure they've got some cash reserves. I'm not privy to their financial statements, but look, they can't do this 2 years in a row. The country can't tread water forever. Jimmy or Kyle, whoever wants to answer this question, it's a big ask. What happens if there's no basketball tournament this year? Do we see a breakaway from certain conferences and say, to hell with y'all, we're going to figure this out on our own? We're tired of all this bureaucracy, and it's a lot easier to maneuver a small boat than a cruise ship.
Well, I think in football, I mean, you could see a clean break in the Power 5 conferences for sure, and then possibly maybe those conferences would come up with some kind of agreement with the group of 6. And now I think there's 5 or 6 schools that classify as independent as far as working out deals on out-of-conference scheduling, and that sort of thing. But number of scholarships, depending on if you're, in a Power 5, or maybe you get a few more, or if you're in a group of 6. So you're going to have some things happen, I think, like that. And then when it comes to the playoff, I mean, this is simply black and white, dollars and cents. I mean, they're going to have to go to 8 teams, because the first thing it's going to do is take 90% of the whining out, because that would allow all 5 conference champions to get in. And again, that would eliminate so much of the griping. And then maybe have a group of 6 team, possibly, and then the best 2 teams after that, and then go from there, because the money that can be generated just can't be ignored. And when you've had such a catastrophic financial season like we've had in 2020, and so many, certainly the big money sports that pay the freight, you've got to consistently take advantage of revenues that are really low-hanging fruit, so to speak.
Yeah, Kyle, what were the numbers you quoted yesterday that are spent on advertising revenues and what's generated from college football?
It's projected that $8 billion are currently invested into sports marketing with college athletics, and we project another $8 billion, totaling $16 billion once name, image, likeness legislation is passed.
All right, Kyle, I'm going to throw I'm going to be I guess a devil's advocate here, but just throw something out here. I want you to answer it. And then Jimmy, what happens if the star wide receiver for Alabama or Clemson or whoever, Southern Cal, has got a big contract with Nike, and he goes to the quarterback because he's got a lot of extra cash coming in and says, I want every pass thrown my way. I mean, do you see something like that happening? I mean, how do we avoid that?
That's a great question. I mean, being in the football locker room, that's the one place you can say you're truly a brotherhood, and going through all of the off-season training, conditioning, blood, sweat, tears, the whole 9 yards. I feel like a lot of I don't think that players would have issues with, illegal benefits between the teams, because maybe the receiver's Nike, but the tight end's Adidas. So why don't they just bump up the So you get that is that could be a potential downfall, and I don't know what kind of legal ramifications that could bring. But the athletic departments are working their ass off right now to figure out the most efficient and the most efficient and the most reasonable way, because you got to keep in mind, Rob, all of these conferences have their own partnerships with these big corporations. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go ahead with that. And I'll pass this one to Jimmy as I got to get going, Rob, but I appreciate having me on.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm not exactly sure how they're going to be able to keep that from happening. But you would hope that the integrity of the game would still there.
Yeah, and real quick, Kyle, before you go, plug Melt again, because it's founded by my friend Vince Thompson from Chatham, Alabama, who is the founder and the CEO of Melt Atlanta. But you do sports marketing and branding for companies and handle millions, like you say, if not billions, in sports marketing.
Yeah, so Melt, M-E-L-T, was founded in 2000 here by my CEO, Vince Thompson. And not only do we do our core business, but we have a year-long virtual internship called Melt U. That stands for Melt University. And we've put out 70 plus podcasts. We have a weekly meltdown where Vince breaks down the hot topic in all sports. And with the Melt U is so great for all those listeners. If you're out there and you have a college student, high school student, recent grad, all of these guests that come on, you have 100% ability to use Vince Thompson, Kyle, or our Melt name as a connection. And so we're really out there during this turbulent time, which is, really thrown our in-person live event business off. We've pivoted and found some other areas and revenues that we can help all of our students that, because Vince was so blessed when he was at Auburn, graduated in 84. He worked in the sports information department. And so that was his labor of love, is to give back to those students. And so besides the fact that we're, usually traveling cross country, setting up activations, doing Coca-Cola taste tests, representing Yeti, Aflac, you name it. Now we've really pivoted to a lot of content and social and digital content. And so everyone should go check our homepage out. Follow us on Melt U. We have a weekly newsletter as well. And stay tuned, because we got big things coming in 21.
Yeah, you get great guests like Reese Davis, Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, Tim Brando. It is absolutely incredible. Kyle Orr, look, we'll have you back on with us next week. Go Dogs, good win over Cincinnati again. And hey, a lot more stuff happening. But what I loved is that you've given people hope going forward, this name, image, and likeness. And nobody says it like you and Vince. Have a great week.
Hey, yes, sir. You too. Thanks so much.
Okay. That's Kyle Orr from Melt Atlanta Inc. Over in Buckhead. Great company. And check them out on the website, Melt Atlanta, Melt Inc. on the website, sports marketing and branding all over the country. And Billy Roberts has joined us from Atlanta, who Billy lives right down the street there in Brookhaven next to Buckhead. And Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago. Jimmy, answer that question that Kyle just responded to, and give us your thoughts, and then we'll go to Billy.
Well, I just I think we just have to take a step back and just um, see what kind of developments take place as far as some of these different partnerships develop that are still in the thought process. And as Kyle mentioned, I mean, they're trying to come up with ideas, basically uh, every minute they're in the office, to offset this loss of revenue this year. So it's really uh, taken place so quickly that you almost just have to just go, hey, let's take a step back. Let's let our heads clear and try to digest exactly uh, what is happening as we speak, and just um, see if we can, come up with some alternative possibilities or solutions as to what we can do. But as far as the teammates, certain guys having some kind of a agreement with one particular a shoe brand, uh, and that type of thing, and then having putting pressure on the quarterback to throw them the
Yeah,
ball if they're a wide receiver or something like that. I think that's why they pay coaches. I think
that's
they
right.
would probably have the a priority when it comes to those type of decisions.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that one. Because and Billy, what we were talking about was if you do the name, image, and likeness, and the wide receiver has a big deal with Nike or Under Armour, whoever it is, and he's got a lot of money coming in every month or however they pay him, can he go to the quarterback or would he go to the quarterback possibly? Sure, he could, and say, "Hey, I'm gonna give you X number of dollars. You keep throwing passes my way." That's the real potential. That's it's scary. Let me set that some real quick before Billy answers that question, though. Hello. Okay, sorry. I want to say something real quick about one of our sponsors, Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. They're not open today. It is Sunday, but they will be open bright and early at 8:30 tomorrow morning in Wynne, Arkansas. Red River Ford Toyota. You know John Dobbs Jr., the name. The Dobbs family's been in the car and truck business in the Memphis Mid-South area for a long, long time. They're back. John Dobbs Jr. is part of the Red River Auto Group ownership team. And October 5th, they bought Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're going on I-40 west from Memphis, like you're going to Little Rock or whatever, do yourself a favor. Get off at the Forest City exit, go north 11 miles, Red River Ford Toyota. If you're going back and forth to Heber Springs, like a lot of my friends do, a lot of people I know have houses over at the lake at Heber Springs, Greer's Ferry. Half a mile south of 64 by the Walmart is Red River Ford Toyota. Justin Wynn is the general manager. Rusty Howard is the sales manager. The moment you drive on the lot, they will make this the most positive, pleasurable experience when it comes to buying a car, truck, or SUV. And they've got an inventory of over 700 used cars, trucks, and SUVs. And if you're looking for it, just ask them. Ask Justin Wynn. Ask Rusty Howard, the sales manager. They will go out and look for it. Check them out on their website, redriverfordtoyota.com. And if you want to do a lot of the work before you get there, you can get on the website, and a lot of the process, you can populate it. When you get there, it'll save you time, but you're going to want to buy from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. John Dobbs Jr. from Memphis is part of the ownership group. Be glad to see his friends and relationships they've had over here in Memphis. They're expanding. Wynne is about a 45-minute drive from Memphis. It's easy to get to, and it's worth the drive. Billy, do you think that's a possibility if we go to name, image, and likeness? And let's say Jimmy is the wide receiver and he's getting $10,000 a month, and you're the quarterback and you're getting $500 a month from, Joe's Cheese Balls or whatever over in Augusta, Arkansas. And you're going, hey man, yeah, I'll throw some love your way. Would you think that's a possibility? Would you do that?
I think it is a possibility. I think that, as Jimmy said, the coaches are going to have to, get a firm grip on that and say, run the play that's called, and if it happens once, let it go. If it happens consistently, then it's not checking down to an open target. It's actually a deliberate thing. And if it hurts the team, then, what are you doing out there? I mean, these guys have got to be accountable to their teammates at the end of the day. And, you're going to end up having a bunch of Antonio Brown prima donnas in the college ranks now. It's easy to predict, what's going to potentially happen. The bigger concern I have, and I was reading something this morning in the on ESPN's website, is that LSU's tight end Gilbert has decided he's going to transfer after his freshman year. Now, this is a number 6 recruit, and he had a pretty good freshman year for LSU, but already he's transferring. So if you've got a guy like that who's already exhibiting, some independence and, not being a good teammate and kind of quitting on the team because he told Ogeron, early in December that he was done for the year, wasn't going to play anymore. And then you compound it with somebody who's trying to build a personal brand as an 18 or 19-year-old, with financial considerations. This is a huge Pandora's box. I could see if enough plays didn't go their way, rather than getting the quarterback to throw you the ball, you could demand that the coaches draw up plays for you, or you're going to transfer and go to Alabama and go to Georgia, which is the other 2 schools that were recruiting Gilbert when he decided to go with LSU in the class of 2020. He's not a marginal player. This is a potential star tight end. Tight ends, as you guys know, are, hard to come by. They're not just growing on trees out there. They're kind of a special type of athlete. So, that's where the problems are going to arise. Is somebody's going to, be a 19-year-old Antonio Brown type and just be a diva and a prima donna. And for that reason, I think they need to take whatever money that the NIL process beget somebody and put it, arm's length away from them and their family in some type of a trust fund that can be doled out, over time, much like a retirement fund for you or I, or, a professional person working.
Yeah.
Make it a retirement account, something that they have in the future, protect their, protect them in the future from baby mamas, from relatives, from, friends. We all know how that kind of pressure can be brought to bear on a young person that's coming to a lot of money all of a sudden.
Yeah. Let me say this. I've said this for years because I do a lot of estate planning and what I do for a living, outside of being a radio host here on Sidelines with you and Jimmy. And that is, there's 2 types of trust: an age-banded trust, which you get the money doled out at age 25, 30, and 35, or however you want to do it. The second kind is an incentive-based trust. Well, that's one where for every dollar that you earn from your job, you get $1 or $5 or $10 from the trust. Obviously, you increase the amount as you get older. That'll wake your kids up and get them out of bed in the morning. Okay. But I've always been a proponent of, if you're going to pay these guys via name, image, and likeness, or whatever way you do it, put it in a blind trust or an age-banded trust where it's locked up and it cannot be touched, because these guys are already getting all their food paid for, their living accommodations, and so many other fringe benefits. Now, they have to work for it as a student athlete, have to work their butts off. Okay. But if we're going to do it, we better put some safeguards in, but we don't want to micromanage it and over regulate it. We don't need too much regulation. Just have some simple rules. Okay. That's what I would say we ought to do. Jimmy and Billy, and I know, Billy, a Sunday afternoon for you, there's no distractions, as you say, because the Falcons are playing, and quite simply, they're not a distraction. But
well, they already laid their weekly egg against Tampa Bay, so that's already happened today. It's just ridiculous.
Jimmy, it's we should all go to a Falcons game and suffer as a group. It's worse. It is amazing to me. Every team in the NFL has money. Like a lot of these colleges have money. Look at the University of Texas. They have all the money in the world, and they've had 11 straight seasons of 4 losses or more. Now they've got Steve Sarkisian, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But look, let's do this. Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago, national college football contributor here on Sidelines. Billy Roberts, college contributor from over in Atlanta, my roommate in the pride of LaGrange, Georgia. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And before we do it, I want to say something about the Dorian Insurance Group. Tom Dorian, that's who I work with. My wife, Audrey, and I've known Tom for 43 years. Most people don't like talking about insurance. It's not so exciting. So you think, but you got to have it. Okay. You've got to have insurance, whether it's property and casualty, homeowners, life insurance, whatever. Tom Dorian, 6240 Poplar Avenue, 901-328-5858. Give him a call. It's like having a conversation with a friend. Even if you don't know him, he's a great listener, father of 5, a CBHS graduate, University of Memphis graduate, played college football, started on the offensive line, 81, 2, and 3. Easy to talk to, has a great team that he works with. So give him a call. You can find him on our website at sidelines.live, the Dorian Insurance Group. And one other thing, if you're like most Americans, you might go years between making a claim on your homeowners or property and casualty, whatever. They have a program that will allow you to return and receive up to 25% return of premium. That's the Dorian Insurance Group. Check them out on our website. And we're going to be right back after a quick commercial break. Again, we will be with you till 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern, broadcasting live from the Cherry Farm in Parkin, Arkansas, looking out at Crowley's Ridge. The snow geese, they're taking over the world. It's like that Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Birds. Oh, the humanity of it all. The snow geese, they're coming at you. But anyway, we'll be back with more till 5 p.m. Central. Okay. Yeah. Did y'all, hey, were y'all hearing the thing? I must be doing something with this wire. Everything, the connection's there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fine.
We can hear you.
Okay. Just making sure. I think I'm hitting, okay. Yeah. But I mean, Jimmy, both of y'all, that's the thing that I worry about with the name, image, and likeness, and with the cost of attendance. These guys are already getting, most of them, $1,000 a month, spending money.
Yeah, I just think you're also looking at legal ramifications, because every Power 5 school pretty much has an all school deal with one of the shoe companies.
Yeah.
And if you have individual players wanting to wear their own brand of shoes, or certain guys wanting to wear Under Armour compression and all that, I just don't think how they're going to be able to. I don't see how they're going to be able to pull it off if the university has already had a multi-year contract, with that type of thing. So, it's it's kind of just a big web of entanglements out there right now as to what it could potentially grow into. But man, I just don't know that you want to just get closer and closer to what we have in pro sports, like this immediate transfer rule, immediate eligibility. It's basically free agency. So you just got to wonder, where they're going to draw a line with it.
Yeah. There's no telling where it goes. And that's, they've been wanting to, and has this officially been passed by the NCAA, or is it something that's going to come up? It's going to come up at the meeting that they have after the season.
10 seconds.
Okay. Whoops.
Rob.
Yeah. Okay. I can't hear. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna turn it on.
Okay. Ready? Okay, Rob Browne back here with you on the Sunday afternoon Sidelines.live wrap-up show. Again, listen anywhere you are, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, www.sidelines.live. We've got Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago, national college football contributor, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, and Maury Gaston from down in Birmingham is going to chime in here for a few minutes. And we're covering a lot right now. Maury, the first part of the show, we had Kyle Orr, a friend of mine from over at Melt Atlanta Inc. They are a sports marketing and branding company founded by a friend of mine, Vince Thompson. He's the founder and CEO, Auburn grad from Chatham, Alabama, down in LA, Lower Alabama. But they've been working, he's been doing the branding for Coca-Cola for 20 years. They have done 17 straight NCAA Final Fours until last year. And for the last 8 years, they helped produce ESPN Game Day. But they handle millions, as Kyle said, perhaps billions of dollars in sports marketing and branding. And Maury, I want to get your answer on this question. I know you're limited in time. You're at the College of Chapters, but we were talking about, and I brought this question up. I asked Jimmy, I asked Billy. Name, image, and likeness. Let's say the wide receiver is getting $10,000 a month with Nike or Under Armour or Brooks shoes or whatever. What about him going to the quarterback and saying, look, here's X number of dollars. You just throw every pass my way. There's a potential conflict right there. Now, Jimmy and Billy both talked about, well, you've got coaches. That's what they're there for, to stop that. And if that were to happen, they'd have to step in. But then would that player, get mad and leave like free agency and throw a temper tantrum like some little spoiled brat like Antonio Brown, a prima donna? What do you think, Maury?
Well, I think the value that these young men and women in collegiate sports receive from their education, their room and board, and especially their opportunity to make professional connections with other people, alumni and business leaders throughout the university is worth. It's absolutely priceless. And for us to be throwing cash at these folks with name, image, and likeness, to me, which would be a very inequitable relationship across sports and across teams, is just completely unconscionable.
Yeah, I think it's a potential. It's Kyle Orr brought something up with Melt Atlanta. They do sports marketing and branding, Maury. And I don't know if you heard that part of it, but that could, you've got about $8 billion a year in college athletics that's spent on advertising and revenue and all that. It could double potentially. And then they could incentivize players to, the term opt in, which I've now coined as the new phrase for I quit, for the most part. I understand there are exceptions and there are, but when you just quit on your team and you don't think that bowl game matters, tell that to the fans who support you. You better be real careful if you're a player too, because not all of you are going to make it in the NFL. You might think you are, but you're going to need jobs. And the connections, as Maury just referenced, in business are so important, because the average pro football career lasts about 3.5 years. So if you're 25 or 26 and you've got enough money to retire and live comfortably the rest of your life, more power to you. But that's very rare that we see that. And Jimmy, my concern, again, outside of the wide receiver example I was using, was, you can't put a price tag on the education that you get. But you played college football and basketball. You made relationships that you still have. The most important thing about it with me is you learn how to work as a team, to set goals, meet those goals. I believe in surpassing those goals, but you learn how to work, and you learn about hard work. That's priceless, isn't it?
Yeah, but what makes this day and age different is that you have so many of these players that had their athletic ability and potential recognized at a very early age. And as a result, they've really been pampered most of their athletic careers.
Yes.
And in many instances, when you become a college athlete, and all of a sudden you're going up against players, a lot of them are better than you, that comes as a surprise to many athletes. And then you have to accept the fact that if there are some players better than me or just as good as me, that I have to dig down and find out what kind of a competitive spirit I have, what's made of me inside. And some kids do it, and they're energized by the challenge, and others aren't. And so that is really the big change, I think, in current athletes. And we see it, as you mentioned earlier this year, with this being a pandemic season, that a lot of players were given the leeway to opt out. anytime they wanted to, whether it was before the season began with, a couple of really key Penn State players, Chase, the outstanding receiver at LSU, and then you had other guys that waited 4 or 5 games into the season, then 7 or 8 games, and you even had guys opting out before the last regular season game. I mean, it's just been bizarre, and you just have to just wonder if this is kind of opening the barn to let the horses out here. It's really an uncertain time.
Well, and those are great points. That I will say this as a fan, and I love my school. Think about fans all over the country. They're not going to support their schools in the ways they're being asked to if they see a pattern of players that are coming in and, hey, the first 3 or 4 games of the season, things aren't going really well, and these guys use the term opt out. And when you listen to a lot of the media, that's as if that's their decision. But you know what? You can't just always do what you want to do. That's not how life works. And I see it all the time. My dad would ask me to do something growing up. He'd say, "Boy, get over there and do that." And I ain't talking. I was talking yesterday. And I'd say, he goes now. And I remember as a kid wanting to get paid on Monday because I wanted to go get the big Jim Camper, the karate guy. And he goes, "Boy, if you think if I paid you on Monday, you're going to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday out here and get this yard work done." I said, "What?" He goes, "Don't ask a stupid question." See, that's the way I'm raised. And so are you, Jimmy and Billy and Maury. And that's what we cannot allow. This attitude of these malcontents to drive the wagon. I mean, we cannot allow it. And I tell you right now, college athletics will not get the support from the fans because you say, well, these young people today, that's how they are. No, they're not. I think the young people today, and Jimmy and Maury and Billy, we all have kids the same age, within a few years of each other. They get blasted as a group a lot. But I'm damn proud of my kids, and I know y'all are too. And Maury, you and I know at 715 West Magnolia, it ain't perfect, but I see the product, and I could close my eyes and the music and the stuff that they do, and all. It could be 1985 all over again. I think we got to be real careful of throwing this generation under the bus. But yeah, there's some malcontents out there like Antonio Brown, but man, we've had jerks like him around for a long time. Billy, wouldn't you agree?
Well, absolutely. And, if we kind of have a logical extension of the point you just made, the little league parent syndrome is going to reach a boiling point because if you think the kid's a malcontent, what if, Johnny, the star tight end, isn't getting enough love and attention from the plays being drawn up. And then his parents are practically coming out of the stands saying, my kid's going to transfer if he doesn't, get what he wants and didn't get the exposure as a freshman that he truly deserves. The way in Alabama builds their depth chart where they bring a great guy and go, you know what, you're probably going to, sit around for 2 years, but that 1 year that you're going to be the man at running back is going to get you in the NFL. Maybe these guys don't accept that spot any longer. They go, I'd rather go somewhere else and play right away than and wait 2 years at Alabama for my day in the sun. And there's going to be a lot of little league parent mentality, helicopter parents. I mean, we all have seen that with our, kids growing up. Some of the other parents are running 2 or 3 times harder than we do with our own kids. And you wonder sometimes, are you failing your own kid because you're not doing that? Or, is your kid going to be better off in the long run because they've been allowed to skin their knees and kind of take their lumps and grow up, and with a little bit of independence. So I think that the parent equation here with the college football parents is going to reach a boiling point. It's going to be a real mess.
Yeah. And Maury, look around the country. You see parents, the little league baseball syndrome. I mean, that's gross. You see parents chasing the umpires out into the parking lot, getting in fist fights with them and screaming and hollering at them. I mean, that's parents that are living vicariously through their kids. And your kids have got to learn at a young age that life is tough. And if you don't get your education and you're stupid, life's really going to be tough. Okay. And your thoughts on that, Maury? Because again, you in your position with your company and put a plug on there and talk about it, what you do. But you interview people from for jobs from all over the country in a highly skilled sector.
Yeah, well, they all want an awful lot in a very short time. And one of the first talks I have, often in the interview process, but certainly after we hire somebody, everything up to this point in your life has had at the most a 4-year cycle, maybe a 5-year cycle, from B team to varsity, from pledge to chapter president, from beginning to end. And now you're stepping into a 40-year career. And you have got to work hard and have reasonable expectations. And just because you don't get the corner office in 6 months and you don't get a director title in a year, doesn't mean you're not performing well and progressing. So you've got to recalibrate and find a good company, and they will have great opportunities for talented people.
Yeah, and I think, Jimmy, you see it, working in your job with Adidas all those years, traveling all over the country. The changes, and I go back in the mid and late 80s, there was fear about the bowls back then. That why the crowds were terrible. The crowds are way better now than they were in the late 80s. And what happened was the bowls got smart and started doing conference tie-ins on a more regional basis where there was more, regional appeal. But those are all excellent points. And all right, let's move on to the next question. It's been a great topic. Okay, we've got a national championship matchup coming up, guys. Alabama and Ohio State. This is the year we know about it. About March 10th, most players went home. They came back the first week of June. And I never really thought that the players were going home and laying around eating cheese puffs and Twinkies and watching SpongeBob reruns all day. They've got too much at stake. They're Division I athletes. They didn't get there by being lazy and irresponsible. Alabama, though, looked as good as ever. They had the one nightmare when they gave up a lot of points in the Ole Miss game. Pete Golding, not the best defensive coordinator Alabama's ever had, but when you got the Sabinator over there, he can help fix any problem that you've got. Clemson, Notre Dame was in the ACC this year. They split. Of course, that was on the road without Trevor Lawrence. In the rematch, Clemson dominated that game. Ohio State, and am I correct, Jimmy, had 3 games canceled this year, so they'd only played 6 games, and Dabo made sure everybody knew that and ranked them 11th. And don't give them any more reasons to be fired up and to play you. And then Notre Dame got into the playoffs, and Alabama won that game. It wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, but what really changed, guys, from last season to this season? The best teams were basically still the best teams. Jimmy, I'll start with you.
Well, Ohio State was really within one day of really their season blowing up, because they finally, the Big Ten came to the agreement among the university presidents to go ahead and have a spring season. And 2 key Ohio State players, Sean Wade, and then the offensive guard, I think his name was Wyatt. The very next day, they were scheduled to go ahead and sign contracts with player agents, which would have made them ineligible. And what's so ironic about it was that really the Big Ten would not have had a season if Trevor Lawrence and his roommate had not decided on a Sunday night, sort of at the spur of the moment, after they heard that one of the Power 5 conferences was going to make an announcement the next day that they were not going to have a fall season. They quickly put together a conference call with Justin Fields at Ohio State, Najee Harris at Alabama, Chuba Hubbard at Oklahoma State, and that offensive tackle at Oregon, who actually ended up opting out before after the Pac-12 made their original announcement of not having a fall season to just mirror the Big Ten, and then a kind of a computer whiz, a defensive lineman at Washington State. They put together a plan to that night put out a Twitter message to express their frustration, their concerns that the players were absolutely being ignored, and they put a logo together of all the Power Five conferences, and they released the Twitter message at around midnight, 12:30 a.m., and they had no idea, but that Twitter message they sent absolutely blew up around the college football world, to the point that by the very next day, you had even Ryan Day, Harbaugh, Scott Frost at Nebraska, all these coaches that started to chime in and express their concerns, which basically was a break with the university president, the conference office, and the athletic administrations at their own schools.
Yeah.
So that really got that thing from being dead in the water to within about 2 or 3 weeks later, you had parents of prominent players at various Big Ten schools who demonstrated and had a protest outside the Big Ten corporate offices, and that also, got things going, and it built up to a point that even after the protest, Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner, said, well, we are still not going to be having a fall season, and the subject will not be revisited. And that was about 3 weeks after they did revisit it. And, the season was salvaged, and you got to give Trevor Lawrence a big a big measure of credit for really having the Big Ten and Pac-12 even playing football this fall, as limited as their seasons were.
Yeah, no, right on. I mean, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta. Again, you look at Clemson to your east, Alabama to your west, Notre Dame and Ohio State. And you can say, well, that was politics getting Ohio State in there. Well, they looked politically, they kicked Clemson's butt. Okay. It was, they dominated that game. Notre Dame, it's the best team Brian Kelly's had. They're getting better. I know they're sick and tired of the narrative. They can't win these top 5 matchups, but they're getting better. All right. But what did you see different about this season? Because it seemed, again, to me, the best teams were still the best teams. And you had a lot of dumpster fires out there in college football. And look, you can have all the money in the world. The Texas Longhorns do. Okay. 11 straight seasons of 4 losses or more. It's a dumpster fire. Okay. But Billy, your thoughts, and then we'll go back to you, Maury.
Well, the SEC narrative for a long time has been, it's a war of attrition. Every conference game, particularly the ones on the road, are just brutal contests. And, running the gauntlet of the SEC season is almost unfair when you look at some of the other conferences where they've got a team or two that are elite, and then the rest of them are pretty pedestrian. And now this year, and not only do you have the normal injury bugs that you would have in college football because it's a physical game, you've got players opting out unexpectedly, and then you've got a team like Ohio State that's played basically half of the games that SEC teams or ACC teams have played. So they're not going to have the injury and attrition factor. Maybe they've a little fresher legs. It certainly looked that way in that game, against Clemson. I mean, that was one thing that surprised me was just how good, despite being obviously hurt, Justin Fields looked. I mean, good gracious. Yeah. He was throwing 50-yard passes, and they were on the money, in stride. He didn't underthrow anybody. He didn't overthrow anybody. And if I'm a Georgia coach like Kirby Smart talking about you here, how did you let that guy get away? I mean, to not evaluate that level of talent appropriately and let that guy walk away is just crazy in my mind. I wish that the Falcons would find a way to draft him. If they're not going to get Trevor Lawrence, maybe Fields, would be the right guy for the Falcons in the NFL. He certainly looked the part a couple nights ago.
Yeah, and Maury, you think about that. Justin Fields, I know it came down to Georgia and Auburn with him, and he goes to Georgia. He's backing up Jake Fromm, and I think y'all all would agree that when Jim Chaney was the quarterback coach and offensive coordinator at Georgia in 17 and 18, Jake Fromm was a much better quarterback. But at the same time, the 2 years that Jim Chaney has been offensive coordinator, quarterback coach up at Tennessee, the lack of development and progression of Jarrett Garantano has been a real disappointment. I think that's the only thing holding Jeremy Pruitt back from having Tennessee this year, maybe winning 8 games. I wouldn't be surprised if they could have done it. But anyway, Maury, again, you look, Nick Saban, the machine. Dabo has got a machine going. Ohio State, they've got a machine. You're an Auburn grad. Last year, the Tigers were number 7 in the nation in recruiting, right behind number 6, Texas A&M. But they were 5th in the SEC and 4th in the West. All right. Yeah. What has to change? Auburn's got a new coach, Brian Harsin, coming in from Boise State. Has the 3rd best winning percentage in college football over the last 6 or 7 years behind Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney. And for people that, I will say this, if you think that Brian Harsin, well, how's he going to be able to recruit? He's not from the South. First, he'll have some guys on that staff and in the football building that have relationships, but a winner is going to attract guys that believe that they're winners. So your thoughts real quick about Brian Harsin and the move he made. Look, God bless Gus and his wife for what they did for Auburn. He made over $60 million being Auburn's coach. I like Brian Harsin. He is an alpha male. My wife's over here at the Cherry Farm on the couch watching the Last Kingdom with Uhtred, son of Ragnarsson. She loves these Viking movies. She loves alpha males. Do we have Uhtred, son of Ragnarsson, as the coach? I like this guy, Brian Harsin, a lot as Auburn, and I think he's the right guy at the right time.
Well, I do too, and I wasn't an advocate for turning coaches. Y'all know that, but yeah. I'm pleased with the outcome, and he's got all my support and best wishes. We need to develop our people after we get them on board. You don't hire superstars and just leave them alone. You got to keep training them and refining them and making them stronger and smarter and better and faster and quicker, and all of that sort of stuff. And we've got to do that and step up our game. And I think we've got a really, really good man to do that, and he's got all my support.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. You've got another signing period coming up in February, the transfer portal, and everybody, I think, is waiting to see what happens. It probably will happen in earnest after the national championship game is over Monday night, January 11th, Alabama and Ohio State. But Brian Harsin will definitely be going into the transfer portal. I think the transfer portal will eat itself alive over time. And like anything, the Roman Empire, the Greek civilization, it'll collapse under its own stupidity and complacency. But it will be, to me, interesting, because when you get guys, if you try to build a roster off of players that were unhappy and miserable where they were, they're going to find reasons to be unhappy and miserable where you are. Now, you can get guys like Justin Fields, who is such an exceptional talent, JT Daniels. And by the way, I think JT Daniels they're revving up the machine at Georgia. And wow, they're going to be tough. And Dan Mullen, the Gators are on a 3-game losing streak. That's a mess. But I do think that this coach, Brian Harsin, is going to be successful at Auburn again. The right fit, the right personality, and he will have to get out there and meet more coaches. But he's been very,
Rob, a lot of times as a barometer, I ask myself, who would I like to change places with?
Yeah.
and up until a week ago, Florida was one of those. But I don't think I want to change places in Florida right now, especially given what's happened at both schools.
Yeah, and Jimmy pointed out yesterday, and I think Jake as well, it's very likely Todd Grantham will be fired in the next week or so at Florida. Will it be Kevin Steele to Florida? Will Kevin Steele stay at Auburn? Will Kevin Steele be at LSU? Somebody's going to gobble this guy up. I'm a big fan of his, and it's going to be fun to watch. Hey, look, we're about to have to take a commercial break. I know you've got to get off, Billy. And Jimmy, we're going to be on with us, and we're going to be joined by Jake Crane in the next hour. And Maury, you've got limited time as well, but you got something you wanted to say.
No, I'm done.
Oh,
that was it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are great points. Listen,
Rob, I'm going to start the rumor that what if to replace Sarkisian at Alabama, that Saban hires Gus Malzahn to be the offensive coordinator? Wouldn't that be a kick in the butt?
That would be wild. Oh my gosh! But look, let me say this real quick before we let both of y'all go. And George Gully, sales manager, Jim Karras, Chevrolet 2000 Covington Pike in Memphis. The Karras family been in the car, truck, and SUV business for nearly 70 years, not by accident, but because they're great at what they do. George, 22 years as the sales manager, over 4,000 customers. Christian and Rachel, his team, they will be there tomorrow morning at 8:30. They're open every day except Sundays. 2000 Covington Pike in Memphis. And I want to say this: if you are looking for the 21 Tahoes, the 21 Chevy Suburbans, the Chevy Trail Boss, Silverado, the pickup trucks, they've got them all. Go out there, check them out on the website, jimkarras.com. It's on the sidelines.live website. They're one of our sponsors. Again, 2000 Covington Pike in Memphis. George Gully, call him, go out there and see him. He's a great listener. They'll find you what you want, and they still have employee pricing. Ask about that. Jim Karras, Chevrolet, 2000 Covington Pike in Memphis. All right, Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago is going to hang on with us. Jake Crane has just come on the line with us. Maury Gaston from Birmingham, as always, we love your critical analysis, your thoughts, and you're doing some great work in that meeting. Tell everybody hello, and God bless. And Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, I know you got to get to Mass and go out there and do some good things in Atlanta. This is always a lot of fun. We got another hour to go on the Sunday afternoon wrap-up show. You're listening here on www.sidelines.live, looking out at Crowley's Ridge and Park in Arkansas. It's duck season, it's deer season, and it's still football season. Got a lot more to go in the second hour. We'll be right back. Hey, Murray and Billy, thank y'all so much.
No problem, Rob. Take care, buddy.
Okay, man. You too. Hey, Jake.
Bye-bye.
What up? What up?
Hey, man. And Jimmy, you there?
Hey.
Okay. I'll be right back, y'all. I'm going to run out for about 30 seconds. And how much longer for this commercial break, Audrey?
About 2 minutes.
Okay, got about 2 minutes. Okay, I'll be right back.
Hey, Jake, you here know anything more on the Steele status or?
I mean, he's not coming back. It's been.
Well, I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, man. I think it's either going to be. I think Dan Mullen may go to the NFL. So I don't know about him to Florida now. I mean, I think he could end up at Florida. I think he could end up at OSU. I think he could end up at. I mean, there's so many, and there's got to be so many other jobs open too.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing right now. It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah. This Texas thing, though, it's just it was just kind of crazy because you had Del Conte just 2 weeks ago saying, Tom Herman will be our coach in 2021. Nobody knew it would last about 25 hours, or
nobody's safe ever. Nobody's safe ever. I was talking about that with Jerry Jones. He was like, I got out at the right time.
Yeah. It's just absolutely crazy, and I can't even imagine what Texas is paying.
However much they have to.
Yeah, because they paid. So Herman got $15 million, and what they paid another $10 million to buy the assistants out.
Yeah, I mean, they're like, oh, well, all right, guys, see you Tuesday.
Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah. But there are.
They got more money than God.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You said 2 minutes.
They not to mention. I mean, A&M's the same way.
Yeah, that oil money. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
you need more money? Hold on, let's go to the other room full of money.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay,
And,
Rob Browne back here with you on the second hour, the Sunday afternoon www.sidelines.live wrap-up show. And Jake Crane and Jimmy Hodge are on here with us. Jake Crane, of course, host of the J-Boy podcast, #1 in the country after now 7 months, and talking a lot about name, image, and likeness, sports marketing, branding, and also about, hey, even in the year of the China virus, you still got the same teams that are the best teams last year are still up there. Notre Dame, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. What's new? Throw all the excuses out the window. And but we were joined by Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, Kyle Orr in Atlanta as well from Melt Atlanta Inc., sports marketing and branding company, and Maury Gaston from Birmingham. Jake, hey, a lot of college football has been played. And last night, everybody watched A&M pulling out there in the last few minutes, 41-27 winners over North Carolina. But let's give us your thoughts. We had a lot of fun yesterday talking college football, the bowls, marketing, branding, expansion of the playoff and whatever. But get her started and welcome to Sidelines.
Hey, good to be back, Rob, as usual. Appreciate you letting me come on. Well, just the A&M North Carolina game, it was a lot closer earlier than a lot of people thought. Bowl games are always funny, though. You never really know the time off, kind of people handle it different. And A&M really hasn't, started, super hot out of the gate in a ton of their games. But you saw what they've done all year, and that's when it's come to fourth quarter time, obviously outside of the Alabama game. That's when they're at their best, and they were at their best. North Carolina, even without their two backs, Sam Howell's such a good player, and what they do offensively is really hard to prepare for when you kind of know what's coming, but especially out of left field with the amount of time that they had, even though they had a decent amount of time, it's still tough to prepare for the way he's able to move the pocket and change the launch point. But I'm glad they won because I had them at 9.5, so I was pretty excited about the way that game finished. But just looking around, it's a very interesting time in the coaching world. You're about to have Black Monday here in the NFL when a lot of coaches are about to get fired now that all of the bowl games are done, basically. And even though there's, one left, really, the national championship game, you're starting to see the coaching carousel really heat up. So it's a very interesting time, and I think there's going to be some news about some staffs getting filled here pretty soon.
Yeah. Were you surprised, Jake and Jimmy, about Steve Sarkisian? Quickly, Texas gets rid of Tom Herman. He's the new head coach at Texas. And I know he's been a coach at Southern Cal and Washington and has had tremendous success with Alabama and in the NFL too.
I thought the timing was interesting, the way they did it, because me and Jimmy were talking about this during the break. The AD came out and said basically Tom Herman was safe. And I guess now that you're not safe, ain't nobody safe out here, regardless of what anybody says anymore. But I'm not surprised that they hired Sarkisian. They've hired a bunch of big name, guys in the past that, have had a ton of hype. And not that Sark doesn't have hype, but Sark's not really a personality that's super outgoing, that's going to be out there making flashy comments. He's kind of a behind the scenes guy. And I think Texas wanted to change the pace like that. I think it's going to be a good hire because a lot of guys want to work with Steve Sarkisian, especially defensively, because the offense he runs, he understands how important pace is, and being in the league and understanding that, it's very enticing for defensive guys. And it's Texas. They got more money than anybody. So I wasn't surprised at the hiring. I was more surprised at the timing. And these things, it didn't happen like they called him that day and he accepted it and then the news broke. This had to be in the works for a week, which means that Alabama and Nick Saban, even though they're prepping for obviously a playoff and a national championship game, he's probably got somebody that he's been working on or had in his back pocket. And I'm sure you'll hear some information because nobody's going to go behind Nick Saban's back, especially when you've been through and graduated from the Nick Saban Coaching Rehabilitation Center and Center for place for people that want to do other stuff good too.
Well, you're right. And Butch Jones got a job at Arkansas State. I didn't think he would be back in coaching anytime soon. But I mean, Jimmy, you're right. He's a good mid-major coach. I don't know if he's a good big-time coach, but Butch can recruit, and it'll be fun. You can win at Arkansas State immediately. They've got money, facilities, great athletic director Terry Mahajer right up the road, about 56 miles from here, up in Jonesboro. I was up there Thursday night, and I'm going to say this too. A common thread, guys, in Herb Hand, quite possibly the worst offensive line. I mean, it was terrible, but it took him the first 4 games, 2 years in a row at Auburn, to get a cohesive group of 5 offensive line starters sorted out. That's what the spring's for, and he couldn't do it. He goes to Texas. He's co-offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, and same problems. Texas, it's just amazing. I would say he's kind of the grim reaper of the grim reaper of offensive line coaches. And I find that hard to believe that he has been around as long as he has. Do you think he's a good coach, either one of y'all?
Well, he's been around. I'm not that sure. I don't know what Jake has heard as far as some of the possibilities of coordinator hirings by Sark, at Texas, but that's going to be critical, and it's going to also be important that even in the other staff positions, the position coaching spots, that you have veteran coaches that have great relationships with the high school coaches in Texas. That's important as any coaching job in the country, to be able to do that, because relationships are just huge with the prominent high school coaches in Texas if you want to be successful there.
Yeah, I totally agree. But you got to get guys that are proven. Texas, again, has more money than any of the football schools in America, $14 billion plus endowment. That is just absolutely mind-boggling when you think about what Texas has. What is it that Texas has to do different, Jimmy, to start winning?
Well, you've got to have to handle the political aspect of the job. There's who have all the influence at Texas that you have to have in your corner. And Mac was great at that, and Herman was not. And you combine that, not winning enough, you're going to have a bad situation, and that's really what happened with Herman. He ran out of allies, and but it is interesting how the time worked. It just appeared that once Del Conte and the university president made the run at Urban Meyer, and he said no, it appeared that they just thought, okay, we'll just stick with Herman for another year. Suggested that they make a run at Sark, that he was, he would be interested if he was approached about the job. And so they decided, I guess, to make one more try at it, and it worked. But it was clear that once word got out that Texas had tried to bring Urban out of retirement, that Herman's days at Texas were numbered. I mean, even if he came back, it was not going to be a good situation. It's probably best that it turned out this way, because I think I mentioned it to Jake before. If you got somebody that you don't think's your long-term answer, and you decide to go ahead and leave them another year, in that job, that you're really losing 2 years. You're losing a year that you would have had to get started on. I don't know if you'd call it a rebuild, but certainly rebuilding the culture and an attitude of winning, and that you can win championships, you would have lost getting a head start there with the new guy, and also you would have lost a year, on working on building bridges with the high school coaches and getting your recruiting back up to where it should be at a place like Texas.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting.
And well, think about this too. Imagine if they kept Tom Herman and then all of a sudden he has a great year next year and they give him a extension and pay him, give him even more money per year. And then he keeps doing the same thing that he did before that one good year for the next 3 years. And that's what happened at Auburn with Gus Malzahn. So I agree with you, Jimmy.
Yes.
And it's going to be interesting to see about Steve Sarkisian. He was okay as a head coach at Washington and Southern Cal. Not great. He had some problems. Hey, and he's worked on it. He's fixed himself. Now, he's been in Alabama as part of Nick Saban's staff. The question that you got to ask is, can he handle doing all this on his own? I'll ask you that, Jake. Do you think is he ready for the pressure that comes with the Texas job?
Yeah, well, I do think people need to remember as well that when he took over the Washington job, Washington had just gone 0-12, and he flipped that program around, and they went, I think, 5-7 his first year, and then 6-6 his next year, and then they had a pretty decent year, and he almost got the USC job after his first year at Washington, but then Lane Kiffin got it. But he eventually got it. And he had those problems off the field. I like to see him now that, mentally and off the field and physically, he's healthy. He's doing his thing. And when you coach at Alabama, even when you're the OC, there's no bigger pressure position than being the head coach or the OC or DC really at Alabama, and really more the OC because Saban's the true DC. So I don't think the pressure, he was the head coach at USC, which there's obviously a lot of pressure to win out there, even though in the Pac-12 there isn't a ton. That's probably the most place, or at least the top two. So I don't think it's the pressure. I just think he's got to surround himself with a bunch of, guys with personality, just because he's not, the most rambunctious guy in the room. He's really smart offensively. He understands what he needs around him to win. He's going to let his coaches coach and not micromanage them. But from a recruiting standpoint, he does need some guys around him with some pizzazz. And at Texas, you can get that. And like I said earlier, I think it's really interesting they went this route because it's different than what they've done before with these dominating personalities that they've brought in there. And I think it's actually going to work for them.
Well, Tom Herman, 4 years ago, everybody in the country thought he was the best coach out there. He had one good year at Houston. How many good years do you need realistically, if you could watch a coach before you hire him? Because you see this over and over, that you hire these coaches that were hot at one level or another, and they get on the big stage and the competition is a lot more intense and they fall flat on their face. Tom Herman is a perfect example of that. Not trying to pick on him, but that was the case there. There's only so many guys like Matt Rule that can take the Baylor football program from the brink of death and get them to an 11-win season last year after 3 years. And now he's the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Jimmy, what do you think?
Well, one thing when you talk about Matt Rule, what a lot of people don't realize is that he turned down the Oregon job to go to Baylor when they were, basically just scraping the bottom. They had, they were still reeling from, the Art Briles regime where they had all the off-field issues with so many players that have been well documented. And he came in there and realized it wasn't a quick fix, but again, he built a foundation and established a culture and a way of doing things that was going to work, and he proved successful at it. Any coach that wins at Temple, you can just about count on the fact that they're going to be successful at a place that has, that has more resources. But Texas is just it's a really interesting situation in many ways, because you're never going to be able to rid yourself totally of the influence of so many boosters that are just multimillionaires, and they are always going to be part of that situation, no matter what anybody thinks about it, their fan base or anybody else. It's just reality, and you have to have a coach that knows how to deal with that first and foremost. And again, that's why Mac Brown had such a great a run there, as did Darrell Royal. As a matter of fact, uh, when you look back at Texas football since 1980, you take away the 15 years that Mac Brown was the head coach there and had the great run. Those other 25 years total, Texas only had 5 10-win seasons during that span.
Yeah, I mean, Texas, we talked about this a lot with Texas A&M in this millennium. Last night, Texas A&M won their 10th game. They went 10-1 this year. That's only the second time in this millennium in 21 years that they have been able to have a 10-win season. That's 2 10-win seasons. They had one 11-win season in 2012 at A&M, and this year they went 10-1. The rest of them, a lot of 8 and 5s or worse. Texas, the same thing. Mac Brown, I think Texas's problem is you get there and you feel this, hey man, I was born on third base and think I hit a triple. Okay. They're not real hungry. And Texas likes to brag about their money and their facilities and all, but they do less with more than about any program in college football history. And there's no excuse for that. But the leadership, or whatever you want to call them, the people that make the decisions at Texas, I just don't think they're very smart. And Texas A&M, guys, we're going to talk about that, Jake. Now, that was Jimbo's 10-1 now in his third year, 10-year, $75 million guaranteed contract. And they're starting to take on Jimbo's personality. And I was really disappointed he wouldn't let him dump the Gatorade on him last night. But, when he got there, remember what his mantra was? It ain't going to be like it used to be around here. He's changed a lot. A&M is starting to believe in themselves. Jake, right? Do you agree or disagree?
No, I agree. And I mean, you return a lot of veteran guys, and that typically, and this is how it goes, if it's done right. And it takes sometimes these bigger schools that have had success in the past doing it kind of half the head coach's way and half their way. And these big time schools that finally say, okay, we're just going to let this coach have full control and we'll let him sink or swim. And sometimes they sink, but when they swim, they really swim. Look at what happens when you gave Nick Saban full control. Look what happened at Georgia when you gave Kirby full control. Even though he hasn't gotten over the Nick Saban hump, he will, but they compete for championships every single year and are recruiting at a crazy level. You look at Texas A&M, they finally said, okay, if we're ever going to compete with Texas and Alabama, at least for prestige, we've got to take a chance like Alabama did, like Clemson did with Dabo Swinney, like Ohio State's doing with Ryan Day, and saying, okay, it's your program from the top to the bottom, structure it the way you want to. We're going to believe in you until you show us that it's not working. And when you make that decision, everybody feels comfortable. The coaches, because typically it's just like anything, like in a marriage. If the wife's happy, the husband's probably going to be happy, and vice versa. If the head coach is happy, that means all the assistant coaches are happy. If all the assistant coaches are happy, that means all the GAs and the players are happy. That means good things are happening. Now, it's not always fun. It's not always nice, and it's hard sometimes. But when you have it and you're doing it your way, and you don't have any interference from anybody else, and Texas is going to have to do this. They're going to have to let Steve do it his way. And I think when you go see what Nick Saban does, you don't take a job. That's why Kirby didn't take the Auburn job, because they wouldn't give him full control, and Georgia would. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's as much as, there's a bunch of coaches that end up being busts, because half the time when coordinators are hired to be head coaches, they don't really understand what it takes to be a head coach outside of the X's and O's and stuff they're used to doing as a coordinator. Now, Tom Herman's obviously different because he was a head coach before, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. Just like there's busts in the NFL, just like DeMarcus Russell didn't work out. It's a part of life and it's in everything. But I think when a school finally decides to give full control to a capable coach that knows how to hire people and has a system that works and understands structure, they tend to have success. They tend to figure out the formula. And to quote a great coach that I once worked for, you got to find your algorithm. And when you find it, pound it, pound it, pound it.
Yeah. And being a head coach, sometimes a guy's a great coordinator, like you say, offensively, defensively, he's a genius or thought to be. But you become a head coach and you have so many distractions, people pulling at you. Then you got to deal with boosters, and you got guys that look like junior samples that are worth $200 million that come in there and they want to sit in on a team meeting and they want to have a locker in the locker room with their name on it. And you got to put up with that stuff. Okay. I mean, that would be difficult. And if you can't handle that and it bothers you, it takes away from your focus. You're being linearly focused on being the best head coach. You better hire great assistants and you better have great people around you that are committed, because otherwise they're just wasted space. And it's hard to go find the assistants that are great coaches, developers of talent, evaluators of talent, and great recruiters. And that's where a lot of programs really suffer. They can recruit, they can go bring the groceries home, but man, they can't cook worth a flip. And that's a real problem. All right, Jimmy, let's look down around the SEC. And we talked about this Auburn hire, Brian Harsin, Alabama situation. They're playing for another national championship Monday. Let's check in here real quick. Arkansas, they didn't get to play their bowl game against TCU. We know why. So apparently, I guess it was the virus. Okay, it gets blamed for everything. It's like that old commercial, for that cereal. Give it to Mikey. He won't like it. He hates everything, but he liked it. Life cereal. But what about Arkansas, Jimmy? And I'm going to go, and after that, I'm going to throw Florida at Jake. But look, Sam Pittman comes in. Who is this guy? I think he's a great hire. I love the hire. What would you give him grade-wise this first season? Because those close losses, they were a lot closer than they've been in years, and the fans now are getting mad at the losses.
I'd give him an A. I don't think maybe any of us thought that Arkansas would win a game. And they showed in that opener against Georgia, until Georgia made the quarterback change to Bennett late in the third quarter. I mean, they actually had a shot in that game, but it showed that they could be competitive. And the only game they got blown out of was Alabama.
Yes.
And that was the season finale. And just truth be told, Arkansas just had no gas left in the tank. A 10-game All SEC schedule, and they were other than that game, they were competitive against everybody. They could have easily been 5-5 and maybe even 6-4. And for anybody to even suggest that back in August would have been just laughed out of any room. And the players really believed, they had fun playing. And when you realize that, you have direction and you have a coach with a vision, and he brought in a really good staff. As a matter of fact, Barry Odom is being rumored as a possible DC candidate at LSU. I mean, he just did a phenomenal job, and Sam Pittman just showed that he knows how to put together a coaching staff. So I think the future's really bright there. I mean, they're in the toughest division in college football, obviously, but I think it's just really energized their fan base, their current roster, and they've really drawn the interest of a lot of elite recruits that, hey, I've got a chance to play right away against really good competition. And, they've got a plan here, and I'd like to get on the ground floor of this.
Yeah, I think you're right. Let me say something real quick about a couple of our sponsors. Red River Ford Toyota, Wynn, Arkansas. They're not open today, but they'll be open bright and early, 8:30 Monday morning. Easy to get to if you live in Memphis. Go west on I-40, get off at the Forest City exit, go north about 11 miles. They're in Wynn. If you're on Highway 64 going back and forth, hey, during duck season, you're going up and down 64, you're going over to Heber Springs, Greer's Ferry and all. About a half mile south of Highway 64 in Wynn. Red River Ford Toyota. Justin Wynn, the general manager, great to deal with, friend and sponsor of the show. John Dobbs Jr. from Memphis. Their family's been in the car and truck business a long time. He's part of the Red River Auto Group ownership team. And the sales manager, Rusty Howard. They're there, your Ford and Toyota headquarters. And they've got over 700 used cars, trucks, and SUVs. Look, if you are looking to buy a car or truck, call Red River Ford Toyota. They've got, I know Justin drives a Toyota Tundra, fully loaded truck. It's black. It is absolutely a beast and is a great looking truck, fully functional. You're not going to get stuck in this truck. Their service department is incredible. Everybody at the dealership is committed to making it a great experience. Tell them you heard about them on sidelines.live. Of course, we are so glad to have them as a sponsor. We get to go over there a lot. We're going to dinner and win tonight. Great people to work with. That is Red River Ford Toyota, about 45 minutes from Memphis. Proud to have them as a sponsor of Sidelines. Check them out on our website at sidelines.live. Also, Tom Dorian, the Dorian Group. Nobody likes talking about insurance. Jimmy, Jake, nobody does, but you got to have it. My wife, Audrey, and I met with Tom back in the summer. 2 days later, we were like, we want what you got. He's a great listener. If he can help you, he will. If nothing needs to be changed, he's not going to try to reinvent the wheel. Tom Dorian, 6240 Poplar Avenue in East Memphis. Call him, 901-328-5858. Have that conversation with Tom. It's worth every minute. Also, if you're like most Americans, you might go several years without making a claim on your auto, property and casualty, homeowners, whatever. They have a program that allows up to 25% return of premium. Ask about it. Look him up on our website. Tom Dorian, the Dorian Group. He is there all the time. Easy to get hold of. Again, 901-328-5858. Okay. Jake, let's take a look at Florida. They're on a 3-game losing streak. Dan Mullen is the biggest fan in the world of Dan Mullen. What is going on at Florida? There are going to be some changes probably, but what kind of grade do you give the Gators?
Well, man, I don't know. Dan Mullen's going to be at Florida much longer. I think he may take the Jets job the way it's looking right now. Just for the season, I'd give him a B+. This last bowl game with the amount of opt-outs that they had, I don't hold that against them. When without Kyle Pitts, they're a different team. That's how good Kyle Pitts was. But they won the East for the first time in a while. They beat Georgia, kind of got over that hump, had a guy in the Heisman race. Florida was back in the national picture after, being kind of a laughing stock with Jim McElwain and struggling under the Muschamp era. So it kind of got them back to where they were. They didn't finish well at all. I thought they gave Bama a heck of a game, a lot better than most people have. But I'd give them a B+. I'm not going to give anything under that for winning the division in the SEC. But there's some things, Dan Mullen, personality-wise, I think he's trying to be cool like Lane Kiffin. It's just not him. I don't think he needs to try and be as outgoing. I don't think he's as likable as he believes that he is. And he's a really good football coach. He's a really good play caller, especially on third down. He does great stuff for Mason Lee. He has a good feel of how to catch you off balance and catch you in coverages he knows you're going to be in. But, the antics off the field and some of the sound bites, they're not very endearing, but overall I'd give him a B+.
Yeah. And the problem with, Dan Mullen and Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Mike Leach, they're in a class by themselves when it comes to developing quarterbacks. But the breakdown with him and Todd Grantham, one of the two's got to go. Obviously, Mullen can make it happen by getting rid of Grantham. That's interesting that Mullen may take the Jets job and then Urban Meyer to Jacksonville. I mean, Urban Meyer is young enough. He can be around a long time. I like him on the college level. I think he would be a great college coach wherever he goes. He won big at Utah. Not a lot of players in Utah. Okay. Hey, yeah. Okay. Look, Georgia. Let's take a look at the Dogs. Jimmy, JT Daniel transfers from Southern Cal. He's got the knee injury. He's out. DeJuan Mathis starts out for Georgia. Stetson Bennett, the fourth, who was fifth team, is the starter for a while. And they have, look, you thought they could get by. But if you don't have a dominant quarterback, you're going to lose 2 or 3 games, and that's enough to certainly keep you out of the playoff and the national championship. Georgia, if you look at the blue chip index, number 1 in the country over the last 4 years. This is the percentage of players on your roster that are 4 or 5-star rated. Alabama's number 1 in the country at 83%. That's obvious. Look at their team. But Georgia's second at 82%. They're not as good as Alabama. Alabama won that game 41 to 24, ran away with it in the second half. What kind of grade do you give Georgia, and look ahead to next year?
I guess I would. I guess it's a little bit of a stretch, but I give Kirby a B plus. I mean, it's hard to lose a player at the quarterback position like the Dogs did with Fromm. And I know a lot of their fan base complained his final year in Athens because hey, they lost 4 NFL receivers off that 2018 team. And some of the younger guys in 19, like Pickens, really didn't make the adjustment to playing at that level until really late in the season. And so the guys that they were trying to replace those NFL guys with, it really took them a while to come along, and then some of them really didn't. So I thought it was the smart move for Fromm to go to the NFL. So, they were in a position here where they had to bring in somebody else, and the Newman thing didn't work out. Clearly, it was hardly a secret that Newman was not adjusting to the new offense. And, you had the Daniels injury situation, which I think had Kirby's hands tied because, you got to go with what your medical people recommend. And although they did clear him earlier in the year, maybe as soon as a month before he actually played for the first time against Mississippi State, he was kind of limited there. And but I do think, though, he did not make a good decision starting Mathis in the first game. I mean, he clearly was in over his head, and they were in trouble against Arkansas until he made the switch to Bennett. And Bennett is one of those guys that I got to really give some respect to, because he never gave up. He got the absolute most he could get out of his ability. And then in that Florida game, he got injured his shoulder on that touchdown pass that put him up 14-0 on Florida. He stayed in the game, played as long as he could, but he obviously couldn't go anymore. And then, they eventually made a change. But, and they lost a bunch of offensive linemen. So that's one thing Kirby's able to do. He doesn't seem to be fazed by significant personnel losses. And, you got to give him credit for that. And he's made, a great hire in Lanning as his defensive coordinator on that side of the ball. The Dogs have been solid. Their kicking game's great. The only, knock on Kirby is that he's not, and I agree, he's not the greatest sideline coach in the world. But when you add all the aspects of being a head coach together, he's really solid. He's one of the top coaches out there.
Yeah, I mean, he is. And he's got the state of Georgia, the 4th most talent-rich state in America, in his back pocket. About 250 players a year come out of that state signing Division I scholarships. It's just absolutely amazing. Jake, preseason, we heard a lot about Kentucky. I'm a big fan of Mark Stoops. I think he's changed the culture. He's building a culture at Kentucky. Prior to this year, they'd won 32 games in the previous 4 years. The best 4-year run, I would imagine, in Kentucky football history. They've got money, facilities. They've got a lot to offer at Kentucky. This year, they were coming in with probably the most experienced offensive line and the most experienced defensive line in the SEC. Not the most talented, but the most experienced. And that means a lot. And they got some pretty talented players. Kentucky won 3 games this year. They won on the road at Tennessee for the first time in a while. And it seemed like after that win, Kentucky lost their focus and they can't throw the ball. Eddie Gran got fired as offensive coordinator, and they ended up going to a bowl game and all. That's great. But what about Kentucky football? What happened? Because I know last year they do really well in Ohio. They do well in the state of Michigan. They're getting the players from in that area that want to come to the SEC. They're the closest school. I look for a lot more out of them this year. Are they taking a step backwards, or you think this is just a pause and they'll be back, as another good year, which 8 or 9 wins next year?
Well, I mean, I think with Mark Stoops and the culture he's built there, especially defensively, I don't think they're going to go back to the 2-win Kentucky embarrassment of the league anytime soon, because he's been able to do a really good job of evaluating linemen, not only defensive linemen, but offensive linemen as well. Their problem was they weren't able to perfect the forward pass. I mean, and it shocks me because I know Mark Stoops is a smart football guy, and I understand wanting to be a defensive football team, but the lack of passing game, and you knew what you had coming into this year for the past 2 years, and I know they fired Eddie Gran and they should have. It's just amazing because I know he was seeing the same stuff in practice, and I guess maybe he had this theory of, well, if we control the clock and don't turn the ball over, it's almost like kind of like being a triple option mindset. I think he tried something and it just didn't work. I think he's got to be able to expand the passing game, and that's how you end up getting the offensive recruits at skill positions on offense. Because if you look at Kentucky defensively, they look like an SEC team. They play like an SEC team. Their offensive line, that's why everybody liked them this year, and rightfully so. But I also pointed out coming into this year, because there was like, well, Kentucky last year led the SEC in rushing. Well, they had a running back and wide receiver at quarterback. I mean, what do you think they're going to lead the SEC in passing? When you run it as much as they do, you're going to accumulate a lot of numbers. Now, that doesn't mean that they weren't good at run blocking and doing all that. Of course they're good at it. It's all they do. It's like asking, it'd be like, now it's like asking them to pass that. It'd be almost like asking Navy to pass that all the time, or Army or Air Force to pass that all the time. So they're going to have to totally overhaul that offense from a passing game standpoint if they want to take the next step. And right now is a great time. Georgia's going to be back where they are, but there can be a fight for that kind of second tier, almost on the verge of that top tier, because they will be good defensively, and Mark Stoops has kind of been entrenched in there enough. You just got to change his offensive philosophy.
Yeah, I want to talk about a couple of other schools outside the SEC from the American Athletic Conference. You got Cincinnati right there, across the river from Kentucky. Big Ten, SEC, but they had a heck of a season, played Georgia a really good game. Say what you want about guys that weren't there for Georgia or whatever. Cincinnati's pretty good. Luke Fickell's done a good job up there. University of Memphis, right in the middle of SEC country. Arkansas, they're on the border there. Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee's right there. Alabama's a couple hours away, the state line from Memphis. But what did you think about the job? Let's start with Memphis, Jimmy, that Ryan Silverfield did this year. He took over from Mike Norvell, who had a 12-win season. They went to the Cotton Bowl, lost to Penn State last year. But he was the offensive line coach. He's been around a while. He knows Norvell's system, and he helped the Tigers get to an 8-3 record. Now, they gave up. There was just some ridiculous games where Memphis won against Central Florida, and there were nearly 1,600 yards of total offense. I mean, throw defense out the window. It was a weird year. We know that. But I think, just in my opinion, that Justin Fuente, Mike Norvell, and now Ryan Silverfield are continuing to build on the culture. And, people say, well, Silverfield is he tries to be friends with the players or whatever. I don't know. I think he's a good coach. And I think recruiting-wise, he's getting Memphis in with better players. But Jimmy, your thoughts on the Memphis program and also what Cincinnati is doing or needs to do to continue to be competitive in the middle of SEC and Big Ten country. But start with Memphis first.
Well, they got to fix that defense. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, their offense was fine. They are going to have to, fill the opening at quarterback, and with their offense, I don't see them having any problem having ever being able to recruit skill players who can throw it and catch it. So I think they'll be fine there. But the obvious issue is fixing the defense, and that goes without saying. All you had to do is just watch a couple of those games. They did have a couple of disappointing performances in which they should have beaten South Florida easily, and they were very lucky to win that game. And then had a disappointing performance at Tulane, but for the most part, I mean, a position coach moving up to the head spot. I mean, I think Ryan, had a solid first year, and I think they're in good shape to have success in the coming seasons. And you've got the full support of the administration. You've got a very enthusiastic fan base, so you have all the ingredients to continue this really good run of success they've been on.
Yeah. What about Cincinnati? Luke Fickell leaves Ohio State, goes to Cincinnati. They have been, winning 10, 11 games 3 years in a row now. And they've entrenched themselves as a very attractive location for recruits to land. If Luke Fickell were to leave, I don't know where he would go, but Cincinnati has been bringing in coaches from Central Michigan, and different ones like Brian Kelly, Butch Jones, different coaches. Now Luke Fickell, something is working up there, kind of trying to bring that to light.
Jake.
I'm
you want me or you want?
No,
yeah, go ahead, Jake. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh well, I mean, Luke Fickell is a really good football coach, and he has full control of everything up there. And he's got his guys. He's got a DC that's been with him forever, Marcus Freeman, that does a great job. He understands the lay of the land up there perfectly. You talk about relationships with high school coaches. I mean, he's renowned in that area. He's going to get a big-time Big Ten job here soon. I know he's an Ohio State guy. I'm shocked Michigan didn't make a run at him, but I understand that a little bit. I expect him to get a big-time job in the Big Ten, the next one really that opens that he's comfortable with. And Cincinnati was a really good team. And I know we say, all right, they played Georgia good even with the opt-out. So Georgia was missing some key people. I mean, it's impossible not to talk about it, regardless if it's agreed with or not. But I thought Cincinnati up front is what I think separated Cincinnati. I think they were really talented, but they were also very disciplined. Number 93, Ponder, I think is an NFL player. He's a guy that's going to be a really good NFL player. I thought he caused problems for Georgia up front all day. I thought JT Daniels was a little bit off. But Cincinnati, again, and I've said this on the show, and we've talked about it, I think one of the most disciplined, if not the most disciplined team on defense in the country. And Luke Fickell's got it rolling. And if you think about where Cincinnati is and how big of a place that is, there's some good recruiting ground there. They play some good ball up there. There's a lot of good football play. There's a lot of grass in Ohio as opposed to other places like New York and stuff like that, Illinois. So I think Luke Fickell, he's done great at Cincinnati. And I wouldn't be shocked if Luke Fickell took a big job in Marcus Freeman if he didn't leave to take another big-time DC job. I know he's garnered a lot of interest from schools like Auburn, Texas, OSU, and others. And he wouldn't be the guy that would step in and be the head coach there next. So hats off to Cincinnati. They gave Georgia a heck of a run for their money, and it was a great year for them. Yeah, they should expand the playoff to 8. I'm tired of this.
Yeah, that's going to be fun to watch and see if that happens. But I'm with y'all. I mean, what's happened at Memphis, people said, oh, it can't be done. No, you get the right people in there and you make the commitment. Cincinnati, same thing. And Cincinnati's they have coaches come and go. They've had a lot of them come there and go to higher jobs. Memphis has done that now with Justin Fuente and Mike Norvell. And eventually you'll get one that'll maybe stick and stay there for a long time. But it was also, I don't know, was it a surprise to y'all when Scott Frost, the success that he had at Central Florida, he's a Nebraska guy, his parents, the whole family are Cornhusker Red. Is Nebraska football just something from a bygone era that cannot be recovered, the glory days? Because you look at their recruiting, they used to recruit California a lot. They're recruited all over the country. There's not enough people in Nebraska. Obviously, They had that walk-on program from every county where they could bring in a lot of linemen, and they built guys like that. You know, it was incredible, but it's completely different. And Jimmy, I'm going to ask you this. Can Nebraska football come back and be competitive? Bo Pelini was there. He was a jerk. He made everybody mad. But they can't get any traction. What's wrong with Nebraska football? I know they've got money. They sell out every game, 80,000 plus. I know a lot of people in Omaha. They love the Huskers, but it's not working. What's wrong with Scott Frost?
I don't think there's anything wrong with Scott. I think he showed what kind of coach he is at Central Florida.
Yeah, I think he is.
But the issue is that the administration just made a horrendous hire with Mike Riley. I mean, it was just an absolute disaster. It was, good coach, but the wrong coach at the wrong place at the wrong time. And it was just like flushing 4 years or 3 years just down the tubes. And again, you have 3 or 4 years like that in which you're going in the wrong direction. It's just clearly not a fit. And at the same time, you add the fact that because of that, you're not going to recruit at the level you used to. So this is a much, much bigger fix than I think anybody realized. And, there was kind of a little fool's gold that first year, because near the end of the Frost first year, they really had a great chance to beat Ohio State in Columbus. Didn't quite get it done there. And Martinez was a freshman. And then, they lost some players, and they just really haven't been able to have the caliber of players up front on both sides of the ball that they're used to having, not to mention the depth. And I still honestly think he needs about 2 more years to really even be competitive. And if they can come close from a personnel and depth standpoint, I mean, Frost will do the rest, but they're just not even close to being there. And that's not none of his doing.
Yeah. And Mike Riley's a guy that he's had a number of jobs, and I'm like, why? Who knows? But yeah, he didn't help that program at all. All right, let's go back here in the SEC. Jake, LSU, the defending national champion LSU Tigers, started off getting just curb stomped at home by Mississippi State. And that was a funny narrative coming out of that game. Mike Leach is going to dominate the SEC. No, he's not. And I kept saying he'll have better linemen on both sides of the line of scrimmage than he's ever had before. But he's also going to be going up against defensive front sevens that he is not used to going up against week in and week out, especially the top half of the SEC. They end up winning at the end of the year. LSU does on the road at Florida. Don't throw shoes, please. But LSU, we know, is loaded with talent. Miles Brennan, no superstar at quarterback, certainly didn't come close to what Joe Burrow did. Heisman Trophy winning quarterback the year before, 15-0 national champions. Is Coach O only as good? Some coaches can do a lot more than others, but is he only as good as his superstar coordinators? And that really, unless he can find a home run with the defense, he's going to be on borrowed time. I mean, I like him, but I'm saying we know the world that we live in, and LSU has everything. They're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels, but man, they really bombed out this year. I know they had guys that quit and didn't play this year, and that hurt them, but they just defensively, Bo Pelini wasn't speaking English.
No, I mean, they, coming off the national championship year, obviously, you get a pass unless it's just a total disaster, and it was looking like a total disaster. And there was obviously a little bit of heat on Ed. They finished all right. Miles was doing pretty good. He got hurt and trying to put up Joe Burrow type numbers. I mean, that's a historic year. And I know it's been broken this year, but you look at how crazy this year's been offensively. Who knows what will happen next year? But Ed Orgeron's one of the best recruiters in the country. He's out there a little bit. He's different. But LSU will always have talent. They're in obviously a very talent-rich state. They're the state school. That's where kids grow up still wanting to play, even to this day in the social media age. But I think next year they have to do something. They're going to have to look good. And if you look with Mac Jones, leaving and stuff like that, there may be an opening there, for Alabama. You don't know how Auburn's going to be, but LSU will always be talented. And I won't be surprised if they bounce back. They'll have guys, they'll be hungry, and they'll be the outsider. That's when LSU is good, when they're the outsider, not when they're the preseason darling. It's almost like Auburn in that same vein. Not every program handles that well, and they'll be the outsider again next year because they had a bad year, and they'll have a chip on their shoulder, and Edo will be fired up and red-faced and saying stuff we all can't understand unless you're right next to them. So I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, I do too, but they got to get a defensive coordinator that can come in and fix things in a hurry. They've got talent. I don't know if they've got that much talent on the defensive line. They didn't have any superstars this year. I know their best lineman quit and didn't play this year, but they've got to get a capable defensive coordinator in there quickly. Let's look at Ole Miss. I like Lane Kiffin. And when they hired in the preseason, I thought Arkansas would win 4, maybe 5 games. I know I was crazy, but dadgummit, they lost at the end there with LSU. That could have gone to overtime. They lost that heartbreaker with Missouri, and we know about the Auburn game. The officials blew the call, and they could have won 6. But their record is what it is. Now, Ole Miss, I love the Lane Kiffin hire. Great play caller, great developer of quarterbacks. Defensively, they were better as the season went on. They got a little bit better. DJ Durkin is a capable defensive coordinator. They got to get bodies in there. Jimmy, you've had you've had a great read on Ole Miss throughout the year. They win their bowl game. Hey, against Indiana. Tom Allen's done a heck of a job building a program at Indiana. That's 2 years in a row. He's lost a close one in a bowl, last year to Tennessee, this year to Ole Miss. Give me your grade on the Ole Miss Rebels.
Oh, I would probably go also in the B+ range there. I mean, the work that Kiffin did with Matt Corral was just remarkable. Ole Miss really offensively wasn't stopped all year except at Arkansas, where Corral had problems reading the zone coverages that Barry Odom put into place. But other than that, their offense was basically unstoppable. Again, it's very similar to what I mentioned in regard to Memphis. I mean, their defense has just been terrible for years. And, Lane mentioned as early as the Alabama game, I think, which was the second or third game on the schedule, that, the only way we fix this is to go into the junior college ranks and then find what we can off the transfer portal and just build some size, some strength, some athleticism, and build some depth and see if we can, hold teams into the low 30s. And if we can do that, we're going to win a lot of games. So he knows what they have to do, but at the same time, there's other coaching staffs that are good at recruiting too. So they're going to be facing some stiff competition for those players. But still, though, they can sell immediate playing time and an opportunity to play in the best conference and the strongest division in college football. Yeah,
across the state, 72 miles away. Mike Leach, Mississippi State, his first year. They started playing better at the end of the season. They got the win in the bowl game. Look, the record, they won 4 games, but they started playing better, turning the corner on the road in the game against Georgia. That was the first game of the JT Daniels era, over 400 yards passing. They held Georgia to 8 yards rushing. That was interesting, with 45 players on scholarship on that road trip. Jake, he had success at Texas Tech. Mike Leach had success at Washington State. Two places that are way out there, remote outpost, okay, for a college. But he brought players in and his schemes and all, and he was successful. And again, they're going to be better linemen on both sides of the line of scrimmage for him at Mississippi State. What about, though, he doesn't ever have a great running game? I don't think you're going to win in the SEC, and y'all are going to probably agree with me. That's not breaking news. I know everything seems to be these days, but he's not the biggest proponent of the running game. And Hugh Freeze wasn't either when he was at Ole Miss. I think that's what cost him even greater success than the success that he had. What's your grade on Mississippi State, and what are the most pressing needs for Mike Leach and the team? Because he got rid of a lot of players this year. You know, you're going to do it his way or the highway.
Yeah, you know, the first year is always a watch for me, especially when you take over him, the circumstances that he did. So whatever grade I give him, it really doesn't matter. I'd say a B- just because, you know, you had to trim the fat literally during the year. You kept the team together. You guys didn't give up. You won the bowl game, played Auburn really tough, beat LSU. The thing with Mike Leach, like you said, in the run game, and it's not that you have to be a run to open the pass team. That's not what I'm saying. I don't think that's what anybody's saying. It's that you have to have some type of balance. And even if you're a team that passes a lot, you need to pass to be able to open up the run. But when you never run it and you become one-dimensional, I just believe the athletes and the coaches are too good in this league to not have the book out on you after a while, and you won't be able to move the ball, and they're just going to heat you up and then play coverage. So I know it's what people from me to you to Dana Holgerson have been begging Mike Leach to do for years. I don't know if he's going to do it. He does a good job when his guys get in that system. And I think he'll have some success and win some games he shouldn't. But he's also going to lose some games he shouldn't. But if they ever want to take that next step, or if Mike Leach, in my opinion, ever wants to take that program to the next step, he's got to be a little bit more balanced. And if you're going to pass to open the run, that's fine, but you've got to run it. And I think it's, you know, to beat a dead horse, but it's the truth. And I appreciate you having me on again, Rob.
Hey, absolutely. We're going to go a few more minutes, a little bit of sidelines extra. And I think Mike Leach has learned a lot. And, you know, he's such a brilliant mind. Defensively, they're not going to be able to lock people down because that up-tempo, fast pace that he does is too much for any defense to be able to play lockdown football. Let's close out by talking about Tennessee. And Jimmy, Tennessee this year, I thought they would have a better season. They had that 7 or 8 game winning streak, went to Georgia. It was a fairly close game at the half, but by the time the game was over, Georgia had held Tennessee to 1 yard rushing. Tennessee then went on a losing streak, losing 5 or 6 in a row. I mean, they beat Vanderbilt at the end of the year. A&M was the last game of the year. They lost. They're competitive, but their problems at quarterback are really killing them. And Garantano, he may come back, but I think Harrison Bailey out of Marietta, Georgia, is a really good quarterback. JT Schroet, they've got some guys there. Brian Maurer out of Ocala, Florida. Why is Jim Chaney not having the success at Tennessee with the quarterbacks that he had with Jake Fromm at Georgia? I know Georgia had better talent, but the difference is like 180-degree difference because that's what's holding Tennessee back. And Jeremy Pruitt he knows football and he can recruit. Your thoughts on Tennessee?
Well, it starts and ends at quarterback. And, you know, it really fell apart and went straight downhill during the Kentucky game. They had 3 good drives in a row going, got down maybe to the Kentucky 25, I guess. And Garantano got sacked on a, dropping back the pass, fumbled, lost it. Kentucky, I think, went on a long drive and scored. Tennessee gets the ball, goes right back down the field. They're moving the ball. He throws the 50-yard pick six. Next possession, they have another nice drive going. They're down to, I don't know, maybe the
the Kentucky 20. He throws an 85-yard interception, pick six. I mean, the air just completely went out of the entire sideline. Kentucky wins 34-6, the biggest road margin Kentucky had at Tennessee in the history of the series, and everything just fell apart from there. But it just comes down to quarterback. And I think what really complicated their problems involved the fact that this happened to be the year which you had an all-conference schedule, all 10 games were SEC opponents, and Pruitt was in a very uncomfortable situation of throwing a quarterback in there like Bailey or Maurer that had no experience, and in this league you'll get eaten up. And he just, I guess, felt he couldn't afford to do it, and Garantano just never came around.
Yeah, Tennessee offensive line this year was loaded, but they just didn't have a quarterback. And Eric Gray, Ty Chandler, at running back, you thought would be just a juggernaut, but they weren't. All right, closing comments here. Jake, we got next Monday this Ohio State Alabama National Championship matchup. Just real quick, your thoughts early on. I know we're 8 days out on who you think's going to win this game. Jimmy?
Oh, I thought it was Jake. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. No. Yeah, go ahead. And I realized Jake had to get off. He had another interview. But Jimmy, your thoughts about this early on Alabama Ohio State National Championship game? I think it's a matchup, and it's got Alabama's attention for sure, I would think, after what happened to Clemson.
Well, it's the absolute best thing that could have happened to Alabama, because as bad as Ohio State was against Northwestern, it made anybody that saw that game really question Ohio State and just how good they were. I mean, coming into this Clemson game, they'd only played two ranked opponents, and Fields had thrown 5 interceptions in those 2 games. Now, granted, they didn't have Olave in the Big 12 championship game Big 10 championship game against Northwestern, but they did have those tight ends, and they just brought those tight ends into the offense out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting that kind of passing game production with those 2 tight ends. But truth be told, I mean, Ohio State had been marking this game on the calendar for a year, even though there was no guarantee that they would be matched up against Clemson in the playoff. But when you're working out at 6 a.m. every day, and you've got multiple 36, 48-inch monitors with the score of last year's Fiesta Bowl right in your face, it gets old after a while. And they were absolutely on a mission. I mean, they were laser focused, and I think Clemson maybe got a little bit fat and happy after that Notre Dame game, and they were 4-0 lifetime against Clemson. I mean, against Ohio State, and I thought they would just go out there and dominate the game. And Ohio State was prepared to play for 60 minutes, and they were outstanding. I mean, if they play like that against Alabama, I mean, they definitely got a chance to win. But I think what we're going to see there, again, they had just been pointing to that game. I mean, they played at their absolute peak efficiency, and it's really tough to get a team to play at their peak 2 games in a row like that. Now, they very well could, but I think what could be a problem for them was that was just a ridiculously physical game. I mean, they were carrying players off. It seemed like every other play, and that hit that Fields took, I think I think he's still injured. I mean, yeah. I think there's a rib problem. I mean, he got through the game just on adrenaline, but I doubt that he's going to be 100% for this game. But maybe he will be. But one concern I have with Alabama is that in both the Florida game and in this Notre Dame game, the last quarter and a half, they went into cruise control. And they're not going to beat this Ohio State team if they don't play 60 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And it's going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, but I think if Alabama plays their best and Ohio State plays their best, Alabama's going to win the ball game.
Oh, I agree. I mean, Alabama has so many weapons, and Ohio State is loaded as well. But Alabama's loaded with better players even than Ohio State, which, by the way, it's Alabama number 1 on the blue chip index, 83%. Number 2, Georgia at 82, and number 3, Ohio State at 80. So you're going to see some incredible amount of future NFL talent on that field. Hey, Jimmy Hodge, we're going to wrap up Sidelines here. I've had a great show today. We were joined in the first hour by Kyle Orr of Melt Atlanta, Inc., sports marketing and branding company. Talked a lot about name, image, and likeness. Also, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, Maury Gaston from Birmingham. Jake Crane joined us here in the second hour. It's been just, a lot of fun covering a lot of topics. And bottom line is, man, everybody out here is wondering, what's going on? What's the future of college football? Name, image, and likeness. We brought up a lot of points. You can see money, as Kyle Orr from Melt Inc. said, to be paid to, quote, opt in, which is you fulfill your obligation, your commitment to your team. It's what that really is. But we're going to be fine. And all the gloom and doom people out there, if that's what they want, then they'll have it. But if you can conceive it, you can believe it, you can achieve it, you can have as great a future in college football as we want. We've been in some rough patches before, and we get through it. And again, preseason, Jimmy, you remember last spring and all summer, all of the negativity out there. There won't be a football season. How can these players be on the same field as one another? Well, look, we did it. We're doing it. And we'll continue to do it. These guys are incredibly resilient, but give credit to the managers, the trainers, the directors of equipment operation, like my friend Dana Marquez at Auburn. And there's so many people like that all over the country. They are committed, and hats off to these athletes that stayed through and played in the bowl games, regardless of what you might think they mean. You're going to remember the rest of your life who was there in the toughest of times. And that's what it's all about is commitment. Hey, don't quit because you're tired, quit because you're done. Our time is up. We thank you for yours. Check us out, www.sidelines.live. Support all of our sponsors. Sidelines is here to serve you. We are blessed to have great sponsors. And Jimmy Hodge and Rob Browne are out of here. We will be on the www.sidelines.live podcast this coming Friday at 3 p.m. Central. But go to the website, sidelines.live, during the week. All the shows are up there. Audrey, thanks for the great job of producing. From the park in Arkansas, sunset on Crowley's Ridge, we're out of here. Okay. Hold on, Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy. No. Hey, that was fun. That's really interesting to hear what Kyle, keeps bringing up.